conversations. Let's have real conversations.
Get ready to stir it up.
Life events and everything in between. Let's go.
Get ready to stir it up.
No capping. If guests got you covered right up.
Get ready to stir it up. Stir it up.
Come on.
Get ready to stir it up.
Welcome to Stir It Up. Today, I'm here with Zizwe. Zizwe and I are going to be talking about being multicultural.
Yes, we are.
Coming from two different places and how you live your life with that. I think a good place to start from would be you introducing yourself.
Okay, I will do that.
Thank you.
I'll introduce myself how I always introduce myself, and now it's actually so relevant to this conversation because I always start off by saying, hi, I'm Zizwe. I'm half Kenyan, half South African. I am a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend. And from a career point of view, I like to say I build people and I build brands. So that's Zizwe in a nutshell.
Thank you. That's a good introduction. That's a very good one. So, as we start this conversation, it might be good to set a bit of context for people.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about Zizwe's first 5 years on this earth.
Okay. So Zizwe's full name is Zizwe Vundla.
Okay.
Yeah. The name Zizwe is a Xhosa name, so South African. It means
I heard the click.
Yes, you heard the click. Yes, you heard the click. So that's my my first name means Mother of Nations. Yeah, and it's actually generally given to kids who are multicultural. So even my name speaks to the fact that I'm multicultural. And then Awor is my Kenyan name, which is a Luo name. The reason I'm half and half is because my dad was in political exile in Kenya. So he escaped apartheid South Africa because he was an activist and he didn't believe the narrative that he was lesser than because he was a black man, right? Okay. So he came here and he met my wonderful mother. And here I am as a result of that, right? So I was born and bred in Nairobi.
Okay.
So grew up here, grew up Kenyan. So beyond the first 5 years, I think my parents were always very clear that as much as I was half and half, just to make sure that assimilation was never an issue, so that I was never othered by people in Kenya. They're very clear. Now, the fact that right now we're in Kenya, we'll hopefully go back to South Africa one day when it opens up. But the fact that we're in Kenya now, we're raising Kenyan kids. And so that was very much the angle they took. Okay. And I guess in many ways, that's why, especially for the first part of my life, and when I moved back to South Africa later on, I very much identified as being a Kenyan because that's how I had been raised.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting, right? So your dad was happy for that to be the status quo, as in, did he try to tell you South African stories, tell you anything about your South African heritage? Did that come into play in those conversations?
Yes. Oh, for sure. So by saying I was raised Kenyan doesn't mean like we negated the South African part, right? So I very much, first of all, knew why he was in Kenya to begin with, and the fact, what was happening in South Africa, which necessitated him being in Kenya. So I knew about the political situation. I knew about his family, so the Vundla's part in the struggle in South Africa. He was not the only one. I mean, it was a family-wide activism, if I can put it that way. Okay. I knew, and then I grew up in a home with a lot of South African music and art. Yeah. And then because there was actually quite a huge exile community in Kenya, so there were a lot of other South Africans who were actually married to Kenyan women. Okay. So there was this, there was this exile community, if I can, I can talk to that. So I was plugged into that. So it was never a thing of, shun the South African side. It was just that you need to know enough and be inculcated enough in that culture to still identify as a South African, but in terms of language, in terms of, really driving the fact that Luo, I speak Luo now, which is a Kenyan language and all of that, just again because there were actually a lot of half and half kids, kids of exilees who struggled in Kenya, because I guess their parents took a different tact where we're like, we're South African, we're South African, we're South African. And I think, which made it hard for the kids to,
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So you're talking about being Luo. So in my very basic cultural immersion that I've been doing, Luos are supposed to be the lover people, the nice, gentle, soft people.
Yes.
Is that what's the description?
I would say we are lovers of life.
Lovers of life.
That is how I would describe Luo people. So if it's about, and I think we have a beautiful language as well. So beautiful. I mean, even the music, especially the music and the culture is very much about, let's enjoy life. We're here, we're here for a good time, So, so let's dress well. Let's drink nice whiskey. Life is to be enjoyed and to be lived. So that is very much the Luo mantra, which is, I trust me, I got that on 100%.
It's very interesting. So there are all these associations made to different tribes, right? Yeah. And that is one of the few that I was told when, and the teams at work. So one of them says, "Hey, don't let no Luo man come and deceive you.
Let me tell you.
He will show you premium shaggy. He will show you good love, and then."
And then, it's so funny. And I was actually talking about this to a Luo colleague yesterday. Because also the thing is, and again, maybe I'm biased, but Luo is it sounds very nice and it's very romantic.
As a language.
Oh, yeah. It's very nice. And the music, like a lot of the Kenyan music, when it's love songs, they're genuinely in Luo because it just sounds. And you'll find, even though you don't speak Luo, I've had friends from other cultures like Kikuyus who are asking me, what is he saying? It sounds so nice. I'm like, it sounds nice and you don't even know what it means. Yeah.
No. It's interesting, and I love that you say that because it reinforces some of the things I've heard, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's hearing you talk about having that South African community, and also but being raised Kenyan. Now that several years on. And you've had the privilege of living in both countries. What are there stark differences that you have come to see?
Stark differences?
From the small community that was here, that you engaged with, versus the real living in SA and just being there. Were there things that are very different, or were there any myths that you grew up with?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. You know what I would say? I'm not sure I would say myths per se. Okay. I think moving back to South Africa when I did, I was able to see the fullness of the culture beyond, because when I was growing up in the 80s, what you saw on TV, even just beyond the exile community, what you saw on TV was obviously the activism and a lot of that. So maybe my view of South Africa when I was younger was very much, these people are just, especially I'm talking about Black people now, they're all freedom fighters. They're just fighting. So I didn't see the wholeness of these people that they loved. They had good times. They, the wholeness of the Black South African. I didn't see that. So I think the privilege of going back home and meeting my South African family for the first time, right? Because I didn't know them either, which opened up a whole new family for me, a whole new side of love, of people who loved me. I think was enriching. It more felt like it added on to who Zizwe was, because I was able to see, oh wow, I knew one side of myself, and at that point it felt like my whole self, and then you're just like, wow, I'm actually so much more. I come from so much more. So it made me, I guess, even more whole, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. Yeah. And I'll tell you, the way we watch Indian movies, and it gives us a view of India. And we watch these, American spy movies and we have a view. we grew up on these South African apartheid movies.
That's it.
And so our view was that everybody was in the struggle.
That's it.
And so everybody was either in prison or on the streets marching.
That's it.
Or everybody was in some form of exile or hiding, right? But we never really got a view of that rich culture, the heritage,
That's it.
the dance, the music, food.
Exactly.
Just the cultural element, right?
Exactly.
And so what I hear you say is you had a view, but it wasn't a well-rounded view.
It was
and
not.
so going back home then opened a whole new world to you on what it was like.
Yeah.
And how did you feel about that when you began to?
How did I feel about that? It's interesting because I guess the first thing that comes to mind was, again, when I knew the Kenyanness in me. So now you need to start exploring. Okay, I knew I was South Africa. I knew I was South Africa like on paper. What does it mean practically? And a lot of that was also shaped by how people were treating me and my sister, because we were both in the same situation as these Kenyans who are now, okay, they're Kenyans and they're South African, but they don't necessarily act like those of us who grew up in South Africa. Yes. Their accent is different. They don't speak Xhosa or Sesotho or any of the languages, but on paper they're South African. So I think, especially in the beginning, it wasn't easy. Let me just put it that way. I think moving back to South Africa wasn't easy. I think the good part, as I said, is that the Vundla clan, our family, was very welcoming. They were just, from day one, they were like, you guys are Vundlas, you're South African, Team Vundla, this is it, right? But it was not the same with everyone else.
Yes.
I remember when I first got there, and then there's also the whole thing that I'm darker than most South Africans. South Africans are light-skinned. So between the dark skin, the accent, the fact that I didn't speak a South African language.
Do you speak one now?
No, I don't, but I understand.
Good.
Yeah, I understand. Maybe I need to do better with that. But
but that takes time.
Yeah,
anyway.
It does. So being othered to the point of being stopped by police sometimes, and like, are you foreigner? Are you a foreigner? Do you have the right papers? Etc. Etc. So it was a transition. Let's put it that way.
School. So think about primary school. So you're raised Kenyan.
Yeah.
Did you, in your everyday life in school, did you ever feel different in school, where even though wanting to bring your South Africanness to school, or were there other South African kids in school that you wanted to connect with? Were there any tensions whilst you were just in school, in that school life? Yeah.
So from a school point of view, there were no other we were all Kenyans at school.
Okay.
The tensions would come because of my name. Okay. Right? Because there's no Kenyan called No Zizwe. There's none, right? So already when you introduce yourself as No Zizwe, they're like, what's with that name? Let's forget about the fact that no one ever questions when people have English names, but that's a whole other discussion. I'm just like, that's
true.
It's so ridiculous. No one ever says, "Oh, are you Kenyan?" Like no one ever says that, right? So I remember one teacher who would make a point around. We later became friends, but I remember she would make a point around mispronouncing my name on purpose. Right? So she'd be like, Zinzonzin, Sinzano, Nonzina. And I'm a kid, right?
So that doesn't feel good.
It does not feel good. So so amongst my classmates, no, definitely not. But I distinctly remember that teacher who, and then I remember one time in school, she goes, so are you a refugee? And she asked that in front of everyone, right? And I remember, obviously now I know there's nothing wrong with being a refugee. My dad was a refugee in this country, right? Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with that. But the way she said it, it was like an insult. And I remember I didn't really understand what that word meant at the time. And I remember going home to tell my dad, teacher so-and-so accused me of being a refugee today. What is a refugee? And I remember him saying, Zizwe, first of all, there's nothing wrong with being a refugee. And people who have to leave their homes for whatever reason, especially when there's nothing they did wrong. He was like, I'm a refugee. Does that make me a worse papa? Or does it make... No, it does not, right? So it also just reframed what that word refugee means, what meant to me. Yeah. And I guess when I went back to class the other day, I was like, I don't care whether she calls me a refugee or Sinzano or whatever. It's fine. I'm good. I'm good. It's she's projecting for whatever reason, you know.
But I also think that's also important where you've had that conversation with your father and he also had the presence of mind, the maturity, the understanding to explain it to you, right? Because sometimes you can be so caught up in what you are going through and that whole situation where he could have thrown you completely off. But he did set you on the right path on how to receive and navigate that kind of situation.
For sure.
So now you're an essay. How do South Africans see you?
Like now?
Yes. Do they see you as South African or do they see you as Kenyan? I know I asked some of the weirdest questions.
Oh my goodness. Look, that is a tough one. I think the majority of South Africans would still not see me as 100% South African, right? So the analogy I always make is, if I were to run for president in South Africa, would I get, what would people say? I think most people would say, but this chick is not South African, right? So I personally feel that. And again, it's just because, again, do I speak the language? Did I grow up there? So do I understand some of the nuances, cultural nuances of having grown up there? No. Does that negate how I perceive myself as being a South African? No, it does not. Because I 100% believe I am South African. And I've reached a point where no one can tell me otherwise, right? So whether it's the guy at immigration who's asking me why I have a South African passport and I was born in Nairobi, like, I have no time for your nonsense and your shallow-mindedness. I am South African. And that's it. That's it.
So I'll tell you why I asked that. So when I've talked to people who come from different places, depending on what is seen as the dominant country, sometimes they are either received or they are not, or so that they're seen as South African, or they're seen as, you know. So a good example is when, for mixed race people, they would normally be seen as, oh, you are black versus, but so there's almost a sense of not belonging, because if they were in, for example, if they were in Ghana, they would be seen as being British, but if they were in Britain, they would be seen as being Ghanaian, right? So every time I've asked that question, it's like, where do you feel like you belong? And they would say exactly what you said. I am, based on where they feel they are most connected to, right? So they'll say, I'm Ghanaian or I'm British, right? But then there's also the sense of, you know, toggling in between the two places, right? So just getting a sense of how you're perceived gives me a sense of that.
I get you. And I think for me, like I apologize to all my South African family before I make this comment, but if you were to like put me on the spot and say, which one are you? I would say Kenyan.
Okay.
And the reason is because beyond the fact that I was born and grew up here, I am received and welcomed more in Kenya than I am in South Africa, right? So I don't have, once we get over the name and the fact that this name that I've never heard of before, when I speak, when I'm, you know, dancing to Kenyan music, when I'm speaking Dholuo, when I get to immigration, you know, everyone's welcome home. This is where I get the welcome home. In South Africa, I don't necessarily always get the welcome home.
Okay. And I don't know if you remember one of the conversations we had early on. So I said, where do you come from? You said, Kenya. And I said, I thought you were South African. He said, yes, I'm part of Africa. You are right. Instinctively, that's how you probably respond. But then when you've gone home on holiday, you say, I'm going home.
Yes, yes.
But
yes.
home is also where
yes.
family
yes.
is, I suppose,
yes.
right? Where your
yes.
parents are, and
yes.
it's
yes, for sure.
It's a place where there's
That's it.
huge emotion.
That's it.
I assume.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. You're right. When I was going to Joburg in April, I was like, I'm going home.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's honestly, maybe it's also it's situation dependent. You know,
Yes.
I don't know. And you know, when you ask me, it also depends who is asking. And sometimes what I'm wondering about their intent. So, for example, in South Africa, if someone asks me, what are you? Usually, if I sense that they're asking it because they want to other me, I will say I am South African, and I won't even bring up the Kenyan part.
Yes.
No, I am South
South
African.
African.
So
Yeah.
again, it depends. It
Yes.
depends. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, piggybacking off the little thought I started about, depending on where you're coming from, you're either seen as being part of the other grouping. Do you ever think that there are conflicts coming from two parts of the continent?
Okay. So, interesting.
Or things that
interesting.
unite us, right?
Yeah.
So it could
Yes,
be conflicts
yes,
or things that
yes,
I think
yes.
there are a lot more things that unite us.
I think so as Africans,
Yes,
right?
yes,
I think so
yes.
as well, because I mean, I think as Africans, I agree that there are more things that unite us, and whether it's our common view of people and Ubuntu, like we talk. I know we talk about Ubuntu in South Africa, but I think it's a common African thing, right? And I think we can all relate to that. You know, how we look at family, all that stuff. So I think there's a lot more that connects us. Honestly, I think there's a lot more that connects us. At the end of the day, that's what I've found. And I mean, even if I think about the relationship between my mom and dad, the fact that, you know, one grew up in, you know, Sophiatown and then Soweto, and my mom grew up here, and they were able to connect. And I think it was those similarities as Africans and similarity in values, you know, that have kept them together for all these years. So I think actually as Africans, there's so much more that connects us. Yes. So much more that connects us, yeah.
What would some of those things be for you?
What things?
The things that connect us.
The things
So if you had to pick three things that connect
Africans.
So I'll tell you something
Okay.
that connects. So I find that a lot more Kenyans eat with their hands.
Okay, yes.
Right?
Yes.
Whereas there are some African countries you go to, they don't eat with their hands, right? And for me, that's a huge connection.
Okay.
So I was serving my previous guests lunch, and immediately they were washing their hands.
It, yeah.
And I was thinking,
yeah.
oh, wow,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And me, I eat with my hands.
That's
If
it.
you- and-
It tastes better with your hands.
It does taste better with your hands.
Yeah.
And Ghanaians eat with their hands a lot. Now, maybe not as much, but we eat with our hands.
Yeah.
So that it's a small thing, but it's a big connection because there are many places you go to and people just don't eat with their hands. You know, another thing that I have found that has been an interesting connection is just music.
I was going to say rhythm. That was going to be my answer.
Okay.
Music and rhythm.
So go.
Because I think at the end of the day, if wherever you are on this continent, right? I don't think any African can resist. You know, when you hear that beat, that percussion, that guitar, that. I mean, everyone starts nodding, everyone starts whatever. So I think rhythm is the key one that I would say connects us. And even if you look at what's happening with African music now, you know, whether it's amapiano, whether it's
hip life,
all that, right?
Afrobeats.
That's Afrobeats, and you know, even here, you know, with Kenyan music, I think why you can go to a club in Accra and you'll hear the amapiano, whatever, is because at the end of the day, music moves Africans. Like it's something innate in us that we cannot help, whatever. So I feel like it's the arts, it's the culture, it's the food, fashion, you know, beauty, our hair. Like I think there's so much, we have so much more commonalities than differences. And I think even sometimes the differences, I think were, I mean, we don't have to talk about colonialism, but I think there were things that were put in our heads that, you know, that were purposely put there to divide us, and not even just at a continental level, even within our own countries where we are arguing and fighting about things, you know. So I think there's a lot more that connects us. Yeah.
So I in this season, I have 2 episodes actually on decolonization.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
So one of them is decolonization from an Indian perspective.
Oh.
Just kind of looking at it within the Asian context.
Interesting.
And then another conversation is on decolonization in Africa. But it's more around decolonization of the minds.
Yep.
Because there's so many things that we hold on to.
Yep.
And I know you said we shouldn't talk about colonization, but I will go there.
Yeah. Okay. I'm
bit.
happy to do that. I'm happy to do that.
So one of the thoughts about belonging that I want to ask you about is, when I think about South Africa has been through quite a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
And there's always this thought about South Africans being entitled. So both Black and Caucasian South Africans, right? And I have a theory, and I'm going to run my theory by you. Okay. So when I think of the Black South African, I think of, this is my land. This is where I was born. And by virtue of this being my land, I belong here. My forefathers tilled this land. We own this land. We've been custodians of the land, and we've taken care of the land. Our blood has been shed on this land. And through it all, we've been here. We've farmed this land, and we've taken care of it, okay? And pretty much it's a birthright, because that's where we are from the soil, okay? So that's one part of it. And then on the other hand, you have migrants who've come in. And we know the truth that given where South Africa is also a contribution of the development has been contributed by the white South African who's come in and supported. Obviously, to a great extent, with collaboration with Black South Africans.
Was it supported or was it slavery?
Oh, there's slavery.
Yeah, because slavery. I mean, Black people were indentured labor, right?
Maybe I'm being overly generous.
Yeah, I think you're being very generous.
But that's the diplomat in me, right?
Okay, yeah.
So yes, okay. No, but you're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And so, but they've also felt like we've invested, we came. And regardless of the form in which we found this place, we've invested in it and we've built it. And so by virtue of putting the time, putting the thinking and building this, we feel like we belong. And so we are entitled to being here, right? So there's a sense of entitlement coming from both sides. What is the middle ground? And I know this is not where we were going.
Okay, no, this is fine. This is fine. Okay, so I'll speak from my point of view.
And that's fine.
And in my point of view, there's no middle ground. So now you're going to see the Pan-Africanist Zizwe come out.
That's fine.
Yeah. And why don't I see a middle ground? I don't see a middle ground because the fact of the matter is that Black people's land was taken away from them. They were disenfranchised. They're still disenfranchised. I know we talk about systemic racism, and it is still very much a reality for many South Africans. The simple example I always give is that if you think about Johannesburg and Soweto, right? So Soweto is, maybe 40 minutes out, and all the good schools were built in the suburbs, right? So one could argue, why are Black South Africans now complaining that they don't have access to good education, right? I mean, just by the virtue of just physically, for a Black kid in Soweto to get to a good school, they would need to wake up at 4 a.m., take 3 taxis. Like, it's a 3-hour story to get to school. It's another 3-hour story to get back home.
Yes.
The kid in the suburbs, it's 10 minutes walk from the school. So that's what I mean by systemic, like it's still there, right? So in terms of, and that's why I think I think a lot is owed to Black people, right? Which I think a lot is owed to Black people before we can even start talking about there being a middle ground. Does it mean that there's no room for white South Africans? No, of course not. Of course not, right? There's a role for all of us. I mean, I know we call ourselves the Rainbow Nation and all, but I think there also needs to be an acknowledgement of how we got here, right?
Sure.
And acknowledge that, and then do something about reparations. I think, do something about reparations to make sure that we're even on the same footing. And I think the reality is now is that Black people and white people are not on the same footing. And for that reason, that's why I'm saying I can't even see how we can talk about a middle ground. Until we're there. Then let's talk middle ground.
So it's almost, I'm sure you've seen these social experiments where there's a starting line for a race, and then they ask a question: if you come from a single parent home, step forward.
Yes.
If you've ever lost at this, step forward, or step back. Step back, right? And you realize that a lot of the time you find a lot of Black kids have to step all the way like 20 steps back. And then
they start running.
You are like 20 steps back already. How do we then start?
That's the perfect analogy.
That's the analogy that you make.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Because just the access to whether it's education, healthcare, the access to even the certain kinds of jobs, right?
That's it.
But isn't that the kind of thing that the BEE was meant to solve? Yes. Another nerve I'm touching.
No, that's not a nerve. This is an interesting topic. Yes, it was. I think the intent of BEE was the right one, or is the right one. I think in the execution, sometimes it fell apart.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the reality. I still firmly believe that it, again, as I said in principle, because sometimes what you hear, or some of the, and it's whether it was in the execution or people accepting that it was something that needed to be done. Though a lot of times, I've heard people say like, I struggle to find competent Black South Africans. I'm like, that's absolute nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. Just say you don't want to hire Black people, right? I respect that. I would respect that much more, right? Because they are out there. And sometimes, and do we need to put in the work to develop 100%? Yeah, but they are out there. So I think the intent is right. I think maybe sometimes the execution, maybe not where it needed to be. But we live in hope, I guess. We live in hope, and hope that also, like our governments, and I guess this is an African thing, is that our governments put people first and put the people of their countries first. I think that's an Africa challenge, because I think if they do, and they do things with the right intentions and, without worrying about what's in it for them, I think it's solvable, you know? Yeah.
So because you've piggybacked into, we talked a bit about BEE, I will bring us back on course and take us away from this activism slope that both of us could be going on. I'll ask you, so you've worked in South Africa.
Yes,
and you've also worked in Kenya.
Yes.
Tell me what were the two different work environments like? You don't need to make reference to companies, because you've worked in different companies in different countries, right? What is the work, if you were to make a few mass generalizations?
That's okay.
Or observations. Let's call them observations, right?
Yeah.
What is it like working? What was it like working in South Africa as a Black woman of mixed heritage, and working in Kenya as a Black woman of mixed heritage?
Yeah, that's a nice one. So, generalizations.
Or observations.
Observations,
yes.
Sorry, observations. I think observation number one, if I put on the Black woman hat, would be in South Africa, especially as I got higher up in the ranks, you felt that you were the Black woman in the room, right? Because there were generally not that many of you, whether it was Black or whether it was woman, whatever, right? So if I flip that on this side, there are many, There are many of us. There's you go to rooms where actually black women, and maybe also because I'm in marketing and the creative space, you see a lot of black women. So I never feel alone. We're many of us, you know. So I think that would be one of the observations. Another observation would be around hierarchy. So Kenyans are very hierarchical, yeah, which was a shock to me when I moved into this job. South Africans, I think, were much more. I like how I switch between when I say we as South Africans and we as Kenyans.
We as Kenyans.
Yeah. Anyway, as South Africans, we're very. I guess we place less emphasis on hierarchy, in the sense of, I'm not going to feel intimidated walking up to the CEO and saying, hi, you know, how was your day? Do you want a drink? You know, like we're easy, you know? And in Kenya, I mean, I remember when I first came here, you know, I mean, first of all, someone wanted to carry my handbag. People wanted, I was like, what is going on? Like, you know, bringing me, even things, things which, okay, fine, I guess I've gotten used to them now. Even the fact that someone was bringing me tea in my office, you know. But
because you go fetch your own tea.
Yes, my whole life, please, my whole life. I would get up, go make my tea, come back and sit and do it, right? But now there's someone who's there to even do that for you, you know. You found even with people on my team for a very long time. I remember when I first joined, I have an office, but I would always say open door policy. Yeah. Walk in, come in, chat. And people would not walk through that door. They were like, it's the boss's office. Yeah. And I couldn't understand. Like literally, I was now bribing them with sweets, there's chocolate, there's food in my office. Just pop in and say hi, you know? So the hierarchy is one, which I would say is another, from a working environment point of view, is an interesting. So there's I guess pros and cons. Well, there's differences that for sure that you do see. Okay. Yeah.
So circling back to this thing about feeling alone as you go up, right? I see that. So even here, in as much as I think it's more. Where would you say it's more? Is it more in South Africa or more in Kenya?
In terms of
feeling alone as you go up the ranks?
For me, it was more in South Africa.
It was more in South Africa.
Because even if I think about how the excos I was in were formatted, I was always one of the few black women here. But if I look at even the exco I'm in now, I mean, there are a number of us, you know? So even when you have because I think, you know, the way they always say it's lonely at the top, when you're in a group of people where you can't relate, you're even more lonely. At least here, I know I can call. There's 2-3 other ladies I can call to, like, oh my God, my day was awful. No, you know what I mean? So
did you hear that?
I was like,
I had said that.
Exactly.
So the one thing that I often think about is when you're in a meeting and you say something and no one hears it.
Oh yeah.
But then someone else says it. And then suddenly it's a brilliant idea.
And you're looking around like, am I crazy? Did I not just say that?
Did no one hear that? Or was I on mute? You know, so I do see that.
Yeah.
If there are, so within the work context, and I want to stay there a little bit more, I think it's a blessing to be able to work in different places and different cultures and just experience what it is. You know. What are the things that, if you had an opportunity within the Kenyan context, you would like us to begin to evolve with? I'll tell you one thing I liked when I first came here. So in advertising, we are always all on a first name basis, regardless of how senior you are. So my EMEA CEO is on a first name basis, right? But I find that even in Kenya, even with CEOs, it's not Mr. This. I mean, there are a few people who expect to be called Dr. something or Mr. This, right? But I think that compared to my country, for example, there are more people who are on a first name basis here than in Ghana.
Really? Yeah. So you find it more like hierarchical or formal in Ghana than in Kenya?
To a certain extent.
Interesting.
To a certain extent, yes. But the hierarchy is in how you address people, how you deal with people.
Yes.
But you could still also, meet somebody and say hello.
Yeah.
I do find here people don't engage till you engage with them, though.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I would like to change,
Yeah.
where I wish people would be a bit more open and a little bit less passive aggressive. If something is bothering you, just say that this is bothering me and let's deal with it.
Yes, Kenyans are prime passive aggressive.
Prime, eh?
Yeah.
Anyway, so what would you, within the work context, would you consider wanting to see differently?
I'll say the first thing that came to my mind was that I would want for more Kenyans to have more experiences outside of Kenya.
Okay.
That's what I would say. If I think about my life, I think I got a lot of advantage and benefits from, I guess, the multicultural thing, but also the fact that I worked in the US, I worked in a global role, I was all over. So I think I see the world differently and bigger, right? And I think it allows me to dream bigger, actually. Yeah. And so sometimes I think because, for whatever reason, and I think why it's even so important in our industry, which is marketing, which is about storytelling, you have to think big, you have to dream big, because that's how you inspire, right? Yes. And so sometimes I struggle because I think a lot of people, all they know is Kenya.
They're insular.
They're like this, right? Mm. And it's not to say that they're not worldly, that they don't know what's happening in the rest of the world in certain things, especially politics. Like a Kenyan will know politics from every whatever. But in some of the other things, I think it would benefit them so much to just go see what's out there. And actually, that's another difference I would say that I noticed between Kenyans and South Africans. I remember when I was in South Africa with my colleagues, this is when I just started working, right? I remember, let's say we would do work trips to Geneva. After those work trips, and there would be a mixed group, there would be a group of Kenyans and a group of South Africans. At the end of that work trip, the Kenyans would always rush back home. I need to rush back home. I'm like, the company already flew us all the way. We're in Europe. Let's stay. Let's explore Geneva. Let's explore Brussels, The Kenyans would always rush home. Oh, we're going to do, we have errands or whatever they're doing, right? Yes. I'm like, I'm sure those errands could happen next week. But anyway, the South Africans would always stay behind, would always explore, would
do
always
a day or two.
That's
even.
it.
Yes.
Just to see that, right? And I don't want people to think it was because of the money. It was not the money thing. So we were all relatively
senior
paid the same
to be able to.
Yeah, and yes. I always found that so interesting, right? So anyway, coming back to that point, I would want them to see more of the world, just to expose themselves more in that sense.
Yeah. And I think that's fair, because what it does is it allows you to also extend a certain level of empathy and grace and understanding and just perspective take. Because sometimes we are so fixated on a point of view, not always appreciating that there could be 20 other points of view on the same subject.
That's it.
That could bring, a difference to how we're seeing things.
Yeah,
yes.
I agree.
So your two cultures are a gift.
For sure they are.
For you, from a work perspective.
Definitely. Yes. They're definitely a gift, yeah. Okay.
So now we've talked a bit about work. Let's go into friendships and how these two sides of you have helped you form either richer friendships or prevented you from forming friendships, or how they've influenced the kind of connections you make with friends, right? How has it had any influence at all?
Yeah, I think so. So I think my first friends were obviously all Kenyan. So my oldest friends are all Kenyan, and many of them, they're still my friends today, which is a blessing. I remember when I moved to South Africa, because I moved around for college.
Yes.
Actually, all my friends my close friends at university were actually all non-South Africans.
Okay.
So lots of Tanzanians, Ugandans, and I think maybe I was gravitating to them because of the East African thing, right? Zimbabweans as well,
okay.
Malawians and all of that. So I actually always said that I made my first South African friends when I started working. That's when, and I think, when I started working, and again, now those are some of my best friends. So so now I have a very cool crew, and they know themselves, of South African sisters, friends, right? And very, very close. My ride or dies, yeah? Okay. But I think what I also recognize sometimes is that because I think sometimes upbringing also has a lot to do with like, I know we're talking multicultural, but I think the people you gravitate towards are also people who have the similar values or probably raised the same, that sort of thing, right? Yeah. So when I look at my group of my South African friends, the ones who I ended up gravitating towards, well, first of all, we were working at the same company, which I always say that entrance test somehow was a great entrance test for friends because we are all somewhat similar, right? Yeah. And so I have a very good group of South African friends. I have, in fact, just African friends. Let me put it that way. So I think maybe my multiculturalism has allowed me to have a diverse group of friends. That's how I would describe it. Yeah, because I have strong friend groups in multiple places. Yeah,
and that is, and that's what I wanted to come to, right? Because what it allows you to do is you are not stuck with just a few people that you connect with, right? And it probably allows you to see the world a little differently.
For sure. Yeah.
And so I think about one of my closest friends who lives in London, and the conversations I have with her are very different from the conversations I have with my Kenyan friends. Also very different from the conversations I have with the Kenyan friends I'm beginning to nurture here, as well as other friends that I have from different parts of the world.
Yeah, it's interesting because now actually what you're making me thinking about is code switching. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, because I think you have a greater ability to code switch, which in itself is a superpower.
I didn't know it was a thing, but I understand what you're saying because it is code switching, right? Because the conversation in London is different from the conversation in South Africa, is different from the conversation in Accra, is different from the conversation in Nairobi.
Totally. And I mean, on a lighter note, I know what some people have told me is that my accent even changes. So like when I'm with my Kenyan peeps, it's like it's Kenyan, and when I'm in South Africa, so I mean, even the accent is changing depending on who you're talking to. Yeah. So you're code switching in terms of content and the type of friendship, but also in just how you show up. Yeah.
Yes. So we've done work, a little bit on friendship. When I think of being multicultural, another thing that comes to my mind very often is this idea of being able, like family. Okay. And we've talked a bit about family at the beginning, but it's as you go through your family Rolodex. So I come from a family. So I'll tell you now. Let me pause and tell you a bit about my family structure. So I come from a family where my father and my mom have only me. Yes.
Okay.
But 7 out of my 8 siblings are mixed race.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. That's interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. Now, what it's always meant is, sometimes you feel different.
How interesting.
Or sometimes you feel very connected. Or sometimes you toggle between different emotions, right? Now, when I think about being multicultural, I'm wondering, do you have this Rolodex of family? And where do you and I think we've talked about it a little bit already, where you've said where you sit. Is proximity a big part of the connections that you make? Or is it people with the same values? what are the things that drive that connection for you within that family ecosystem? Because sometimes it's values, sometimes it's just the proximity of how close you are with someone, and sometimes it's an experience that bonds you to someone, right? And it could be a whole bunch of things. But because you have this big, massive family of this side and that side, what are some of the things that draw that connection for you?
I would say experiences, the ones
Experiences.
that came, and I'll say experiences because, and I think what defines those experiences was feeling loved and safe with that person or those people. Yeah. And safe in the sense of judgment-free and all that, right? So, and you can just be yourself with those people. So I would say that would be the biggest driver of, but I think that's the same with all relationships, right? The relationships that matter in your life, it's those people who make you feel seen, heard, loved, and all those good things. So I would say that would be it. Yeah.
So in one of my earlier seasons, I have an episode on friendship. And one of the things that we talked about was how when we're young, we're not taught to make friends. And also the friends we make are just purely based on people who are just close to us. So it's the people that we interact with. So it's when you go to school, the people around you become your friends. The neighbors' kids become your friends. You're not always intentional about saying, oh, I've identified Z over there and I want Z to be my friend. It's just by proximity and so on, right? And so I'm asking this question, and it's interesting you say experiences, because experiences are definitely really important, because if it's just by proximity, then you end up with a whole bubble of people who might not always...
Acquaintances
who don't always kind of give you the value you need.
Agree.
And you don't feel safe with all the time, but your values don't always align either. So that's definitely very interesting for me. Okay. So let's come into the social scene of Kenya versus South Africa.
Okay.
Party life, nightlife, just chill scene. How do they compare?
South Africa tops Kenya.
It does.
Yes, it does. I'm sorry, my Kenyan people. But no. This one is flat out. Sorry, it's flat out. It's flat out.
And a Wednesday night in South Africa and a Wednesday night in Kenya, what do they look like?
Okay, first of all, South Africans are now partying every single day. I worked in the liquor industry before I moved to what I'm doing here, right? So I worked for a premium alcohol company, and we saw how the days that, before you knew that peak sale days... Friday, Saturday, Sunday, okay? Then we added Puza Thursday, whatever. So now we've added Thursday. Then on Monday, we added Mohodu Monday, right? So now another drinking day. So now it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So it's like now there's only 2 days left of rest, right? So I think the party culture... the music culture scene in South Africa, for me personally, I enjoy it a lot more. And also because I think South Africans are freer on the dance floor. Like one of the things here which I struggle with, because I love to dance. It's very hard. I'm like, sometimes when music is playing, I'm like, why are we sitting? Like, why are we sitting? Can we play up and dance? And there's no one on the dance floor. And I never get it, And Kenyans are just sitting and you see them nodding and they're having their drink. I'm like, guys, I cannot do this, right? Yeah. In South Africa, I'll be like, in South Africa, we would all be on the dance floor, Yes. So for me, from a personal experience, definitely the party scene in South Africa is, and it's just because everyone is in it. It's not about being cool. It's not, in fact, to be cool, you're on the dance floor, right? Yes. And here I think people are just maybe more reserved about... I'm just like, there's no...
You need to look perfect.
I'm like, no, guys.
But it's okay to sweat a bit.
It's fine, So I'm just like people... I remember when I first moved here, there's an interesting anecdote. And it was one of those situations where the music was playing and it was a song that I loved. So, and again, everyone was sitting down. And I was like, I'm sorry, guys. I have to dance. So I get up and I start dancing. And then someone from someone at the other table, I guess, who knew the job I do, comes to me and says,
"You don't do that over
Zizwe,
here.
we don't
You're
do
too
that here. And it's
senior."
too senior. I said, you don't know me. I am going to dance. And if whoever wants to complain, I don't know even who they are going to complain to, they can go right ahead. So, yeah.
I get that.
Yeah.
And what is a social? So is it topping it in the frequency or also in the activities?
No, it's the experience. So it's not. Yeah, no. It's definitely it's the vibe, it's the fact that it's so people are so in it and people are so present in the moment of having fun and dancing and engaging. So it's even just I'd say it's the intensity and the like people are there's deliberate about having fun and the dancing and all of that, which I think makes it which makes it special. I'm going to give a disclaimer though. As much as I'm saying South Africa, where I do know you can have a very good a good time in South Africa, where again you see people stand up and dance, is in Luo land. So now I'm coming back to my culture.
So in Kenya.
So you see in Kenya, and so again the Luo. So it's like if you look at, and this is why I struggle when people are not dancing. I'm like, on my South African side is telling me to get up and dance.
And
my Luo side is also telling me to get up and dance. So I'm struggling sitting here. I'm struggling. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. What is a typical Thursday night in Kenya? What's a typical Thursday night jam in Kenya?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I'm the right person to ask this
Do you
question.
know? Or you will go home and read a book and watch Netflix?
So for me, it's now, I think these days it's just like dinner with friends, you know, like wine and dinner with friends.
All right.
I don't know if this
So
is
you
an
don't
age
know,
thing,
so you have no idea.
I'm so clueless when it comes to going out in Nairobi. In fact, someone needs to help me. Someone needs to help me.
So that's fine.
Yeah.
But I do get what you say. However, where I'm coming from versus Kenya, Ghanaians party. Right.
I've heard. I need to go party in Accra. I've heard.
You should come for Dirty December.
I've heard.
We have half of Nigeria in Accra for Dirty December.
I need to do it.
We have half of London and half of the US.
Yeah.
They go out and they go home at 9 o'clock in the morning because the last thing is that after you've partied at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock, you go and eat like hot, spicy food.
Nice.
To tone down the alcohol, and then you go home.
I love it.
Sleep and you're up again.
and repeat, rinse and repeat.
Rinse and repeat. And you do that from the 16th of December. So your flight, you're leaving on like the 27th.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you book a flight because you want to book a cheap flight, depending. Right, so, you know, and then there are people who come on the 21st and they leave on the 31st. It's like a cycle.
Yeah.
But, so for me, but I also find that since I've been here, the few events that I've been to, not many, but one of them, which was yours, was, I was thinking, you guys can party.
Really? Oh, really? Interesting. That's good.
No, because I was looking at, so this Huri Park event, for example, and I was looking at the young people, and they dance and dance and dance.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there looking, and I was thinking, and just the artist ability to engage the audience.
True. That's true. Yeah.
I thought it was incredible.
No, it is.
If I'm going to be honest with you.
It is. And I think, Kenya, I think the Kenyan music scene for sure is bubbling. It's definitely bubbling. And in fact, look, it has been for a while, but it's true. And that specific bash, I mean, the fact that these kids were, let me not call them kids, these young people were dancing for 18 hours.
I kid you not.
It's insane.
Yeah. I just stood there and I was thinking, hey, how do you do this?
Youth.
Yeah.
It's youth. Their knees are still working.
There are no aches and pains as they roll out of bed. Yes.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the guys said to me, we like meat, music, and just to chill. And I thought, that's interesting.
That's the Kenyan vibe. Yeah.
That's a Kenyan vibe.
Yeah, that's a Kenyan vibe.
So we've talked about a lot of things. Back to a bit of an uncomfortable conversation. But I think politics is one of the things that is always a bit uncomfortable. we often hear that all African politicians are the same. Not in a way that is always complimentary.
For sure.
But it's more along the lines of what they take versus what they give.
Yes, yes.
Now, considering all the transitions both countries have been through, and they've been significant transitions, if you ask me. If there was if you had a magic wand, so you had a green magic wand for Kenya, and what color do we want it for? A red magic wand for South Africa. What would you be saying for each country as you span that magic wand from a political lens?
Let's start with the Kenyan one.
Yes.
Let's start with the Kenyan one. So, green magic wand. What is amazing, what has always amazed me about Kenya is they're very entrepreneurial.
Yes.
Yeah, Kenyans are very entrepreneurial.
Sure.
Yeah.
They're made different.
They're just made different, and they're innovative. And it's always been the case, right? I know right now when you talk about the youth and innovation, we're talking about it mostly from a tech point of view. But even if I think back to when I was a kid, right? There's something called the Juakali sector. So because a lot of people couldn't afford to, buy, go to a shop and buy a ready-made bed or whatever it was, right? We had literally artisans out on the street.
The apprenticeship.
Who they could make you anything you wanted, right? And it's still the case. You just show them a picture on Pinterest and whatever, they will make, there you go, right? So they will make it. So Kenyans have always had this, this go-getter, and we will make a plan, whatever, right? And so for me, what makes me sad is that despite that, you have so many youth that are unemployed or they're not given the chances and the to monetize this and make something of this. So my magic wand would be something around, because I think what they do here, they can compete against anyone, any Chinese kid, any American kid, they can do that. So how do we open access so that people can see what the amazing stuff coming out of this country so that we can compete.
Okay.
For South Africans, that is a trickier one, because I feel, and I don't know, anyway, my perception is that they're more disenfranchised, because even that innovation and all in a lot of ways was taken away from them, or their belief in their ability to do that is not there. And so it's like you have to even start from that point of giving them that's foundational stuff.
Basic stuff that allow them to strive as humans.
That's it, yeah. So that would be it. And I think generally education, and the right sort of education, is generally a critical thing for that, yeah.
So, Kenyan Magic Wand is showcasing entrepreneurial abilities on a global scale,
yeah,
and giving young people access to be able to thrive through their craft and their ability, that resilience that they have,
yes,
which could be, what do we do with like a youth ministry that is empowering them?
That's it.
And giving them the access that they need,
100%.
whether it's tooling, skilling, upskilling, but just supporting them to be better on that entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
Okay. And then with a South African Magic Wand is, how do we begin to empower, nurture, educate them about just even their basic livelihood. So it's just even as basic as reading and writing, as basic as the choices that they make career-wise. Just
exactly. And then there's also a thing of believing you can be more when it comes to the South African one, right?
Yes.
Because I think a lot of it was also breaking them down, breaking Black South Africans to believe, this is all you have. This small piece of this, like, don't
try and be more.
Yeah, don't try and be more. No, you can be more. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Do you think that this is something that governments will invest in? and what are the things that we can do to push them to do a bit more?
Yeah. Look,
Are there points of influence?
Yeah. Look, I think, is it something government should invest in 100%? Yeah, because it makes sense, even just for the fact that for our countries to thrive, which benefits everyone, right? What I will say is that I think the private sector has to come into play. I think that's just the reality of the situation, right?
Okay.
So that's what I would say. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I do think that the private sector does a lot.
Yes, they do.
They do a lot.
Yeah.
You find that a lot of oil companies, telcos, banks, fintech organizations are actively investing in youth programs, CSR initiatives to drive that social change, right?
Yeah.
But maybe it needs to be coupled with better legislation to support some of this.
Yeah. Now, I've always been a believer, actually, that the private sector, I know people sometimes look at corporate and all of that as, I don't know, we're in our own rarefied bubble. But I think actually the work that private sector does on the grander scale and even on a smaller scale, if you think about the people who are employed by it and the impact they have in their communities, I think is immense. So I'm very much, I'm a corporate girly, and I believe that corporates have a huge role to play in the transformation of lives. So, yeah.
And the truth is, we've moved from just small CSR initiatives to building foundations, right?
Yes.
To building things that have legacy and have long-lasting impact, right? So it's more impact-driven than just, throw a few millions there at it and just so that you're doing something, but just being a force for good within the countries that we're operating
100%. And I think even as you grow old, and I'm sure you relate, right? You want to be associated with purpose. Like you realize that I'm not on this planet for Zizwe, I'm here for something bigger. So even in the choice of where you work, and the things that you do, these are the sort of things you're thinking about. Where the place I'm working, how is it giving back? Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. So as we wind down, what would you be telling your younger self? But imagine you're saying this to younger people who are multicultural in terms of how they see themselves. Because a lot of the time, you find that you might feel torn, or you might sometimes feel like the world is your oyster, but sometimes you might feel like you don't belong. And it could be a mixed bag of emotions that you feel. And the truth is, all these emotions are valid because you're feeling them. What would you be saying to your younger self, Zizwe?
I would be telling myself to not let people put me in a box.
Okay.
Because I think what you find a lot, and even this question we were saying, like, are you Kenyan, are you South African? And the fact that people can't understand when you say both. Right? That's someone trying to put you in a box, right? Because they've decided for whatever that it's one or the other.
You can't be both.
You can't be both.
But two things that are opposites can coexist.
Exactly right. Yes. So for me, and what I've seen in my life actually is I find myself because of that always that question being posed to me throughout my life. I just generally hate it when people put me in any box. So it's translated into many other aspects of my in my life, right? So what I would tell my younger self is don't let people put you in a box, because the fact that you're able to color outside the boxes is actually one of the things that is going to get you furthest in life, right? Yes. So that's what I would tell my younger self, and define who you are for yourself. Because I think there's a lot of, and I don't even think it's a multicultural thing. I think even you as a Black Ghanaian woman can relate where people try and define who you should be. No, you define for yourself. The world will deal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Final question. If there's one thing that you want for work, for social, for family, because all these things are interlinked. and they're part of who you are, and they're part of, you know, where you are, what would it be if there's one word that you want to define? And I know it's a tough one.
Okay. To define who? Myself?
No, define what all of these parts of you would be. I'll tell you what it is for me.
Okay.
I want to have a peaceful experience for me.
Okay, I know what mine is.
So what's yours?
I want to have a joyful experience.
Ah,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yes. Because and I can see what that is,
Yeah.
right? Because and joy is a good thing.
Yeah.
Joy is a really good thing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zizwe.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
I hope it really was.
It was fun.
I have enjoyed it.
You've made me think. I'm just like, whoo.
I made you think, but I think also I've come up with all sorts of questions as I'm talking to you. And because I'm also thinking what could be interesting for this. So there's one last thing to do, which is I'll make you a quick cocktail.
Oh, really?
Are we making a mocktail or a cocktail?
No, cocktail.
That's my girl.
Oh my goodness.
I'll be back 2 seconds.
Okay.
So, to what I term the interesting, exciting, the fun, the whatever parts of this, I mix your concoction, and you're required to taste it and tell me 1 or 2 things that you taste.
Okay.
So, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Stir it up.
Look at the coasters.
I do.
Cheers.
I have stir it
Oh,
up.
that's
It was a
so
birthday
dope.
present.
That's so dope.
Made these for me for my birthday.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see.
So 2 things I taste.
Yes.
Something coconutty.
So there's rum. There's a rum coconut in there.
I was going to say rum.
Yes. That's a color. You taste it.
Did I taste it?
Is it cold? I don't know. All right. Thank you. It was good to have you,
Yeah,
Zizwe.
thank you.
I think that was a good one.